Hello, hello. I'm here with Yakov Merkin of Galaxy Ascendant fame, and we're going to be talking about his Indiegogo today. How are you doing today, Mr. Merkin?
I'm doing very well. I've been having some good time the last couple of weeks visiting family. So a nice month off from the army. Nice.
Oh, yes. I imagine so every time.
Yeah.
Hmm. I must admit, I'm finally glad I'm getting more of a hang of the new YouTube streaming thing. This is actually a live stream this time and not just a recording I put up after. So, Miss Yakov Merkin, why don't you
Yes.
tell us about Galaxy Ascendant?
I mean, okay. Well, to put it as succinctly as I can, it's basically a very ambitious, big scope space opera series in the vein of things like Star Wars or Mass Effect, stuff that I been enjoying or watching or playing when I was not that much younger than I am now, but somewhat younger. And at some point, I just decided that I enjoyed this kind of thing so much that I wanted to write it. And it started off as kind of almost like a love letter to these franchises in the genre that I grew up watching so much. I've unintentionally almost become like a reaction against what all those franchises that I grew up with have become because they've all kind of gone down the tubes very fast.
It's true, especially with the new information that Disney might be killing Star Wars or the characters we love anyway on purpose. This sort of thing becomes more important now more than ever. So,
Yeah.
so this is Star Wars esque of that science fantasy vein, I guess. Um, Tell us about Galaxy Ascendant. What makes Galaxy Ascendant special?
Well, one thing that I talked about a few times previously elsewhere is that in the story at all, the galaxy that I've created for this story is entirely populated by aliens, as far as we would be concerned. Part of it is because a lot of the sci-fi that I did enjoy growing up is always very human-centric, even if there were good alien characters in it, like in Mass Effect, for example. It was always very human-centric, and the characters I always gravitated toward that I always enjoyed the most were the alien characters, going back even just to Star Trek. Was my favorite character growing up, watching my parents showing me original Star Trek, and expanded universe, former expanded universe books. With most of the alien characters that I enjoyed uh, most, and in Mass Effect definitely it was like the human characters in those games were the most boring ones. So I decided when I wrote my own story, I wanted to make it all aliens because that's what's fun for me, and lets me also create have over at this point almost more in the area of 20 different species that appear. As there are like 11 that have been major species, and then they have a viewpoint character from that species. But there is a bunch more that I haven't, for various reasons, haven't been able to spend as much time with. Whether they're be tougher to write from the point of view from,
Mm-hmm.
or just there are just so many that I just can't screen or in a given story at a given time. But that's part of the reason why I plan to keep writing in this universe for a long, long time because I have a whole bunch of options
I
to
get
look
you.
at. Yeah,
The alien question has always been very interesting because it's not as easy as, oh, I'll add aliens. It's like, anyone can add aliens, but then you need culture and everything else like that. You don't even need to talk
yeah,
about it, but it needs to be there. Why does Chewie follow Han Solo around? Why does Greedo, do this or that? Why are Tyranno squids so feared in the Galaxy's Edge universe? And
yeah.
so on and so forth.
Knowledge of sort of including as enough in the story itself that people could get some of that without overloading the story with so much exposition that it becomes boring.
hmm
Was a challenge too.
Absolutely. So tell us about the plot line. What makes why is Galaxy Ascendant a story?
Well, it started off. I mean, it already kind of started off pretty big as far as scope goes. Like in book one already, there was I wouldn't call it galactic scale war, but it was like a regional war within this galaxy taking place over space. That was about a third. maybe a little less than a third of the galaxy, of the known galaxy, at least at that point.
Mm,
And I mean, I'm like, I don't know, it's part of it. Just I just think very big, so I went with that. I mean, the book one is an invasion of this alliance of different systems, different species, alien force, and the main character is the commander of that alien force. Well, one of the main plots of the book is what he ends up doing, how he ends up changing what his purpose is, and deciding what is right and what he really wants to do with a task that he was basically just created just to lead this military force galaxy. And his book one journey is deciding what he wants to do with himself, and the fallout from that really continues through the rest of the books. And with book two, the aftermath
mm,
of that war, without giving too much away, it deals with the aftermath of that war and his decisions there. Book two lead directly into book three, where the events there lead to a bigger war going on with another galactic power that neighbored this region that the first two books took place in. Book three really, like, we have about discovered, or to the lack of a better term, about half the galaxy almost. Although I do intend to leave a good chunk of the galaxy, about 40% of it at least, unexplored for the purposes of the main series here. Big
yeah.
mistake Star Wars made early on, I think, too, is that, like, you set up this giant galaxy, but you see so little of it. Issue of like what's there, and it just made issues for further stories later on. So this way, I'm setting it up already. I have explore already that there's obviously unknown things within that area that will be discovered, whether within this series, which is going to end in book 7, series set in this galaxy, but also that big chunk of galaxy that's completely unexplored as far as our current characters know, and that will get opened up eventually with these are continuations of going on. I have about 5 or 6 different series ideas of follow ups to the main story that I'm writing now. Uh, not so detailed, but I have a pretty detailed plan of where I want to take this going forward.
Right. And with the whole universe thing and plans and all that jazz, it always brings in flavor. It wasn't real like I'm gonna have to kind of disagree with you on the Star Wars thing because it was never really about the individual planets or anything like that that you could explore. But that you had Ithorians and which I can still remember all their names, like Ithorians and Rhodians and um, you know um, oh, I can't remember what the three-eyed monster ones are.
Gran, I think.
Yeah, there we go. Gran, in a bar in Tatooine, it provides that spice of life. You go into the bar and there's a Moor sitting in the background smoking at a hookah, and then you have some subtle traders from the Orient and some men from the Marines or whatever you have, and they're all sitting at different tables in the bar, and it's
Yeah.
much the same effect.
I mean, I think one of the things that the prequels, for all their many flaws, did fairly well was really expanding the galaxy, making it really feel much more lived in and bigger.
Hmm.
Those 3 movies, you get to really feel the scope of things and see how many planets there are, and just how many different you get to see the Senate and all that, and how many different species there are and everything. And it was that really, like I said, even though those movies were very very flawed as far in terms of story, like that, the actual world building was really not bad, and that's what led to the Clone Wars show, which was, I mean, it's, I think, almost universally liked among Star Wars fans to this day. I mean, the only thing I'm looking forward to as far as Star Wars is concerned, the
It's
Lost Season that's coming out in a few months.
Yeah. The Clone Wars CGI show was really good. I think
Yeah,
Genndy Tartovsky worked on it.
that was
Um,
the first one. You mean the 2D one?
yeah. Oh wait, yeah. I was
It's
thinking of a different. Yeah,
Yeah, he was the 2D, the micro series one,
that's right. And
and
that
then
was
the
really enjoyable. And the CGI
the other one.
one was also really good.
Yeah,
And it's surprising. It's like, guys, it only lasted 4 years. It was the equivalent of their World War One. Um, yeah,
it really shaped a whole lot of that galaxy. I mean, even I mean, I've read a couple of the new canon books, not really much. I've really just read mostly just the Thrawn books because Timothy Zahn is still great, even if
yep.
Disney's terrible. But like that stuff, even the Clone Wars stuff is still relevant. I mean, in those book it's relevant to when I've seen a little bit of the theory crafting from the current movies. Like, I mean, that was like, I mean, it really was their World War One. It really set everything in motion.
Yep.
Where he is now, and that's kind of, and also that's kind of how it worked even with the old canon too, to a degree. I mean, they had to change stuff before the prequels. I had to get retconned, but then movies were happening, like that was factored into at least some aspects of it were factored into the expanded universe as they went forward there.
That's right.
Yeah. Another one of those things too. I was in my head when I was writing my own book, especially in books 4 and 5, which were literally books 3 through 5, which is more in essence similar in this, like not quite as big a scale because it's less of a full galaxy being involved.
Hmm.
But what's it called? But it's how long this war should last, basically.
Yeah. And even though 4 years strikes me as a little short for the Clone Wars, like I know that hyperdrive makes things a lot faster compared to
Yeah,
what
that's
they could be, or warp or anything else from like other equivalent um, properties. I do sort of appreciate the economy and just the scale of it. Um, when you're dealing with galactic level, conflicts, this thing is huge. In fact, the few millions or billions or whatever clone troopers and the few billions of droid troopers are actually strikes me as quite small for this scale. We've had on this planet wars with millions of soldiers
yeah.
on either side. It just doesn't.
Well, Star Wars has always been a little bit iffy in many aspects of military, a better term, like of organization or scale of things. But like, I mean, with mine also, I mean, a big reason of what I decided how long my war was going to be is also like I was trying to think in my head space travel, which I have in my books too. It works pretty similarly to how it works in Star Wars, at least how it used to work in Star Wars.
Hmm.
And so, like thinking about that, I was thinking like it would make that much sense for a war like this to go on at least in a full scale sense for a super long time because travel is so quick. Like in a war like this, you're not going to really realistically, you're not going to have so many planetary invasions. Most of the time, you can just control the planet from orbit, like unless obviously for some reason you really don't want to damage it.
Hmm.
Just either just blockade it off, cut it off, or just attack from the sky and then whatever. So, like, I
Yeah.
mean, like one thing the Clone Wars like it was fun of the show, but it is a little bit iffy of like why there were so many. So they could have just resolved in a much like I mean again Star Wars with Clone Wars I get a bit of pass just because it is such a much bigger battle space that was being utilized compared to what I have because again I intentionally made it a little bit smaller, have something
Hmm.
bigger later on if I want, and also because I'm just one guy. I'm not like a writing team, so I have to just. Even though I like I like thinking big, I still really need to limit it. Basically, accomplish in a 7 book series where I don't want this war to be all 7 books. Like I originally actually, what's now books 4 and 5 is supposed to be one book. It's supposed to be a fiery reckoning as book 4. But I quickly realized when I started to outline it that I was going to need 2 books in order to do it justice to give the war to not feel rushed and give the characters enough room to develop and everything. Of course, because of that, I ended up adding some more viewpoint characters, which then made it even longer. But that's also part of the fun.
Yep. I generally try to keep my viewpoints to a sort of close knit group. I've never been much for intrigue or galaxy spanning politics or anything like that. The most interesting things from the original Tron trilogy was when he had those listening plants that could hear the senators and everyone else talk about their ideas and strategies and stuff like that. Though, of course, you know, it was fairly dumb to be talking about it in the halls of power or whatever.
Yeah,
But at the same time, um, it's still an absolutely fascinating way to treat that level of it. Timothy Zahn is, of course, a
yeah,
treasure. And any time they realize book sales are lagging, they just pull out Timothy Zahn,
yeah.
who, of
The problem
course,
now, the problem now is he's basically like almost hamstrung by the Disney canon because even with the
hmm
newest book that just came out, it needs to all be concluded. All three books take place before Rebel series ends. So we don't even know yet what happens to him after that series is over, which we know he's alive, but we don't know what they haven't written anything yet. And it's like
Yep.
more Thrawn books of pre-Rebels because there's nothing else to do at this point.
Yep.
Something,
And
but yeah, no, the Thrawn books really were a huge influence on from the level of type of story he was telling there, and also just from the aspect of G and space combat. As far as realistically, we could manage it with our own. I mean, Star Wars doesn't use real physics as we know them in our universe, 100%. But like
hmm
within those rules, really good inspiration in those books as far as like cunning battle tactics, which I have like characters who are at that level of intelligence more or less in my own war that takes place. So
yeah, and it always adds that flavor, that spice that makes it a real universe, a lived in being of its own.
and
Uh,
also that's also part of the reason why I do like, even though I mean I try to limit it to some degree, I do like having a lot of viewpoint characters because it lets me get into different places very easily, and I don't like having like some books I know do like a lot of one-off viewpoints when they need somebody in a certain place, but I don't really like that. I like having a viewpoint that carries through,
hmm
if not the entire series, at least the entire book. The characters you actually care about, they're not just there need a pair of eyes in this part of the story. So that's why things kind of ballooned for me with book three, and as of book four, I have 8 viewpoints, and book five I have 9, and
Mm.
8 by book 6 and 7. But like that was, I mean, I'm not planning to write too many more books with that many viewpoints, but I just the story needed it at that point. I'm writing these like some of the characters I actually added because I just needed places. I ended up being
hmm
some of my favorite ones to write, so it really worked out nicely.
That's good. Um, yeah, I admit the whole I there's the what's it called? I Jedi book. I think it was by Michael Stackpole, maybe. That was like low key, like first person one, character Corin Horn as he goes through his adventures. Then you have the whole big, Thrawn trilogy, the X-wing series, which has like a whole bunch of different ones, and keeping the scale in is can be difficult sometimes. It's like, well, maybe I should give this person an individual chapter, or something like that, and it's like, no, no, no.
That's why my tendency is just to add somebody else. Whenever I add somebody new, they almost always just end up becoming a main viewpoint, like with equal amount of space to everybody else throughout the rest of the series. Like I said, I added
hmm
in book three, and almost all of them are still around doing like as much time devoted to them as the people who are main characters. Three of main characters from book one. I try,
hmm
and I do also. I realize also that every reader who reads the book will probably gravitate to somebody else out of the main characters. I want to try to give each one out of space so that you don't have a favorite character who just disappears for half the book, and then all of a sudden they show up again. You don't and just you feel like you got cheated out of the time with them if that was a favorite character. So I truly
Yeah.
try and like give each amount of each character, as if not maybe one might get more depending on what the story needs. But otherwise, it's just try to keep it as even as I can. And also because I do enjoy writing all of them at this point. Like it's
hmm
I started writing book six a month ago. I've already written half of book six, and it's just so easy to get back into it. The characters are very clear in my head. I can just run back into their heads right away, and it's very easy to just keep going again.
Yeah. It's yeah, I think that so in Galaxy's Edge, by Nick Cole and Jason Ansbach, which is a great personal favorite, they gave Tyrus Rex, who is the Boba Fett of their universes,
Give him his
um,
own.
his own series, the Case Files. So I'm a part of their Galaxy's Edge, behind the scenes group, and so uh, there we go. So Requiem for Medusa and Chasing the Dragon is basically only of the three books so far. There's also Madame Guillotine, which I'll talk about in a second. So basically, everyone loved Tyrus Rex from Galactic Outlaws. But sadly, he dies in that book. That's only book two of the series, guys. He's only in the one
I've
book.
read that one,
Yeah,
and
and
I'm not up to date on the series, but I've read that far. So
yeah. So then Requiem for Medusa and Chasing the Dragon are entirely on Tyrus Rex. They're both really good in-depth looks into his character. Chasing the Dragon is not as good as Requiem for Medusa, sadly. Um, Partially because they didn't take the opportunity for Tyrus Rex to jump in a mecha and go after his maybe clone son thing. Maybe. Um, then after that is Madame Guillotine, which I don't really enjoy because they split the characterization between Tyrus Rex and this one chick. But the thing is that I'm not looking for in-depth characterization of Tyrus Rex. I already know about Tyrus Rex. I've read the series. I've read Savage Wars. I've read, this, that, and the other, and it's all good. I would rather just have Tyrus Rex have an adventure than learning about some female sniper that went in after some guys that got by alien Antifa. It's like I dig it. I dig what you're going for, but at the same time, it's like no, 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 no. Just set it back. Make it just Tyrus Rex, Boba Fett, or whatever, and make that the focus instead of this other B adventure. And so
Yeah,
that's
give the
like
readers what they want.
right, and it's like I'm sure that people will like it, but the thing is, I'm kind of a more hard to please variety of reader. Um, I often tell people that like taking my opinion is dangerous because I'm not really in touch with what the common people um, want as much as I might have it because I search that ideal, not so much the crowd pleaser, which is
I mean, that's
bad.
also yeah. Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, but what they did do with that is like a better way to approach prequels than what say Star Wars has done or even Star Trek has done, because like you don't necessarily need to be told, and but obviously if there's a demand from the readers to hear this character's story, then you could go back to it. It's like that's why like Solo, one of the reasons Solo flopped, they wanted that story. It wasn't necessary.
Hmm.
Care that much to hear. You don't need to know how he got his gun, how whatever. Like, it's not relevant. People don't care.
Yep.
My policy for now in prequels, I'm gonna like not plan very many that feature the main characters from the main series, unless I find there's a really big demand for it for some reason, or if it's a character who is in the plot, whatever, would work well enough for like a short series or a short story or something like that.
Hmm. And it's all about managing the expectations of
Yeah.
your readers and all that jazz. It's not just like bleh. It's all right.
And
Let's make sure it all works together.
you also need to know how you want to escalate things, how you want to if you want to keep it as a continuing universe to write and not just one series and one and done. I want it to move forward. That's why I said I have some plans already for how I want it to move forward. Like, this was like a thing with the old Star Wars Expanded Universe books. After a certain point, upping everything every time because what else are they going to do?
Hmm.
Eventually, it kind of once you got to the New Jedi Order series with the whole Yuuzhan Vong invasion, it really became unpleasant to read. It became like a very almost like a grim dark with like very everybody's life being miserable and like they could never have any kind of peace. Like I mean, at some point of a character, want that character to be able to like have a life beyond like all of these crazy terrible things that are happening.
Right. But it's like
Like
you're a
pleasant.
part of the hero group, man. This never ends. Looking at
That's
Wedge
why.
Antilles,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. It's the same thing with like I said, it was like a joke someone made. I forgot where I heard it about the new. These poor people have been fighting the same war for 30 years now. Like
yeah.
it's depressing. That's why I do have plans in mind for, in a sense, retiring some of the main characters in my series. So like they'll be in the universe still. They'll be around, but they won't be the main focus of the books anymore. They'll obviously
Yeah.
appear, and I wouldn't rule out obviously stories featuring them or starring them going down the line if there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
But I don't plan on. I don't want to just keep writing the same things over and over again, and this becomes like a mess. Like I do have. I'm setting things up the way I'm setting it up with not revealing the whole galaxy, and also a lot of my characters, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, are in positions of power, like of leadership positions. Those
Hmm.
characters to have them kind of step back from the front line, so to speak, and still be involved in that capacity, but not be the ones we follow in the story. But they'll obviously play a role in the major events. They just won't be the viewpoint characters necessarily.
Yeah.
Like the old canon of Star Wars, they didn't kill off the main cast, but everybody around them was dying off. They killed Chewbacca. They killed a couple of killed
Yep.
Luke's wife. Like versus what Disney did is Disney's killing off the original cast.
Yep.
Not the way to go. And so I'm trying to figure out my own way based on what they did wrong to learn from that and avoid those mistakes myself.
So actually, I can sort of break it down for you, because I've been thinking about this a while. So you have the main canon, and you've got the main characters from the movie. Really, those two are two separate groups. So when they reset the expanded universe, they killed off everyone who wasn't in the movies. Then they're killing off everyone who was in the movies directly in front of our eyes rather than indirectly through the expanded universe reset. Um, so it's really they're killing all of them, and I don't really understand. Like it's one of those things. Like I guess they just hate money, because they bought the product, they want to make their own, and while I get that they don't want to pay licensing fees, they also have already paid several billion in licensing fees. Star Wars used to just print money.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Was built on the characters more than anything else, of course. But
Mhm.
no, I think part of it with Disney, I think, is that they're putting, at least to an extent, an agenda ahead of profit almost because like they're more interested in pushing their agendas of the Force is female and all that nonsense according to them than making money. It seems because I've been telling people for a while also. I'm like Disney's never going to give Star Wars back to the fans that they hate now.
Yep.
They'll let it die first before they give it back to the wrong fans, everybody the Phantom Menace people and like that whole community. It's
Mhm.
not coming back. Like that, a lot of them don't get it yet, but I think maybe they will eventually. That's just like just announced the Obi-Wan series. Like that's like a very pandering move. It's supposed to just get people to come back, and then they're just going to pull it out from under them again with something else they're going to do.
That's right.
People are going to fall for it too because it's Obi-Wan. Everybody loves Edwin McGregor and Obi-Wan, so like, they're going to fall for it. A lot of them will fall for it. They'll be able to keep milking it for a while longer while still not all fans really want, and we'll see what happens.
And honestly, that's why things like Galaxy Ascendant, Galaxy's Edge, Star Knight, and all the other things that are happening, um, are honestly really important. Like we've got to take care of those things that we want to see. If they won't give it to us, well, honestly, we should have been doing it, from the beginning. Um, and I'm looking at my Nick Cole Galaxy's Edge shelf. I'm looking at my John C. Wright shelf, my Larry Correa shelf. Not really all Larry Correa. There's, half Kursova, half Larry Correa, and like it. We can continue to create our things. Like so Amazon has, screwed up their algorithm so nobody can advertise their way into success anymore unless they're lucky. Okay, that's fine, we need this and that, like hey guys, let's work together. I don't know, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what you do, how you take it, and whether or not you're actually producing something of value. Honestly, it's quite the wild west these days, and I'm okay with it because I know it's one of those things that as long as you work on it, eventually you'll be successful. One
At least
hopes.
we have alternatives now, and we have an easier way now than really ever to make it work. At least eventually, like we have between things like Subscribe between actual direct crowd funds, and between with Amazon, we can publish it ourselves and do all that without needing a publisher. So it makes it possible. Obviously, the marketing is still a challenge for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people are struggling with it now, but we have to keep making it because otherwise, I mean, eventually, the people who are so locked into Star Wars being all encompassing get tired of that, whether because of politics or something else, and they'll hopefully start looking for the alternative. I've been trying to promote my stuff to those people. I mean, I haven't gotten that much success yet. Just fixated on Star Wars as the thing, and they just don't think about anything else right now. But like, I think eventually a lot of them will start coming around once
Mm-hmm.
episode 9 comes out and is hopefully will be as terrible as possible. And
Oh, it almost certainly will. And they'll be like, "Why don't you guys like Star Wars?" It's like, yeah, it's all right, guys. It's all right. You know what? Here, come along here. We've got Galaxy's Edge and Galaxy's Ascendant and Star Knight and and Star
Stars Entwined.
Quest and so on and so forth. And you can really just support people who don't explicitly hate you. That's a really nice feeling when you support people who don't hate you.
I mean, it's like, no, like Brian Niemeyer keeps saying, don't give money to people who hate you. And I've been parroting that a lot because it's
Yep.
something like they are doing that. Even if the same people who will Star Wars is terrible will then go and buy Star Wars merchandise because it's characters they like, but it's still the company that hates them is selling it. So I mean,
Hmm. And
tough. But like, what are they? You have at some point you have to decide what's more important, whether it's like whether it's like all of the YouTube money from whining about Star Wars all day, alternatives that you could actually be happy to support.
yep.
So
And it's a lot of it is just kind of getting that new paradigm. Guess what? We're coming off of 60 years, 70 years even of consumerism. And consumerism for its own sake. Like, what do they call it? The term is late stage capitalism. Now, I am a capitalist. No red feelings in this brave American boy. But at the same time, like you got to realize we have to return back to more handcrafted, less corporate ideas. We can go to IKEA to buy that shelf, but you're still the one making it. All the parts for the good novels are there. Like I've studied TV tropes and all these stuff for like 10 years and more. I know what successful, novels and stories and all that have. And then they have that extra special large publisher marketing. But then it's like we don't even have that anymore. We have terrible stories that are trying to destroy everything that you love. The parts don't go away. You can still write that novel. You can still have those alien species. You can still do this, that, and the other. Um, because fundamentally the art and the lessons of art don't go away. They just get hidden and forgotten. And then you bring them back, like how the Renaissance brought back actually realistic looking people into art, and so on and so forth.
no, it's a lot of fun. I mean, also it's fun just seeing all the different takes on the same genre in a sense that we're seeing from the pulp rev, superversive, or whatever community here between what I'm writing, between Galaxy's Edge, between Stars Entwined, between
Mm-hmm.
Star Knight. Like, there's all different takes on on the same genre. Because the best thing about space opera that I've always loved is you can really do almost whatever you want. Have space setting, and you could and space opera. You don't have to worry about that much beyond a certain point about its actual science. You could really have like Center of the Earth
Mm-hmm.
kind of story. You could have the big space where you could have a fantasy world that just happens to have some connection to universe. I mean, my plan long term is for all my books to kind of have some connections to them because I just enjoy that kind of cinematic universe feel of things.
Oh
And
yeah, it is a lot of fun.
even within a space opera galaxy, you have options for like the big scale war stories. You have the small scale war stories, like stuff. You have the more straight up adventure stories. You have like you could follow different type of people, like bounty hunters. You could follow a syndicate type of stuff. You could do all the so many, any kind of a story can't fit in a space opera setting because it's just anything you want. You can just go in this galaxy. There's so much space. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
options to work with, which makes it so much fun. Like, I've also written a couple of short stories the last couple of years for anthologies that I've been involved in. It's like that was a lot of fun for me because I usually think very big, so it's always the big novels for me. But now I've spent some time getting better at the short stories now, and I have a couple that came out that were pretty fun. Scale more almost on the military SF side, telling a small story. All set technically prequels of the main series, but not really directly connected. So it also allows it to stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And those are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Also,
Like
of course, the whole indie publishing thing allows you to have so much more control over your stuff. Like I get to hire my own cover artist, I get to hire my own editor, I get to deal with my own formatting people. I get to make my own book trailers, which I did. I made a fully voiced trailer for this campaign that I'm running now because I just really wanted to. I had an idea in my head and I found voice actors to do it, and I made it happen. It was a lot of fun to do.
And
So I get so
oh,
much more freedom.
oh yeah, like just the fact that small publishing gives you more control over your cover artist. Like sometimes it's bad if you find someone who isn't professional, but most of the time it's absolutely fantastic. Hey, I want XYZ characters, and I want this to be happening. Here's a quick sketch of some sort of positioning I want. You know, they give you the sketch, you say yay, and everyone says yay. They do go back and they bring it back. Like part of the one of the sort of like sad face it facts of the Count to the Trillion series with John by John C. Wright is that his covers, if you compare them in the Golden Age as well, his covers aren't really indicative of the story inside. They don't really have any connection to it, and those were his books published by Tor. For those who
So,
aren't there for it, but then we have Swan Knight's Son and Feast for the Elves and Daughter of Danger and all that jazz. And there's a direct connection between the covers and the stories within, and it makes it so much more interesting because it isn't just a bland spaceship showing
yeah,
up
it's
and
so much in
blasting
there.
off, not even like
Yeah,
fighting
it was.
anything.
Yeah, and it was a very conscious decision when I was first looking for an artist for my first book. I wanted it to be characters on the front, not just a generic spaceship. So I found an artist who, thank God, has been very, very fun to work with, very excited to work with me. I mean, we've done
Hmm.
that I put out. We've done 6 covers now, and each one gets better. I also get better at commissioning them because I get better at knowing. I get better at. I've been making the covers a little bit more actiony as I've gone along, which is also obviously better for marketing, I think. But it's funny. Also, I'm almost actually using my covers as a way to get stealth fan art because if I get the commission, I get to have my characters on the cover. I've gone through, I think, we're at book 5 now, so I've gone through about characters are on my covers already because each book I figure out who is this book, and that's what I've been doing. And it's just, I mean, I think I had my first repeat of a
Hmm.
character just because it was a character who I didn't really just felt like needed to be on the cover a second time. Mostly one, but
Yeah.
just have my characters have a visual of them for myself, like beyond what I have in my head, and also for the readers, especially because they are all aliens, help to some degree to have a visual representation of them. And again, it just makes it more fun because I get to have I also with these last 2 books, I told my artist, okay, I want to do I'm making it part 1 and part 2 with the same title, so I want 2 covers that can kind of connect to each other and show like a bigger picture, which is what he did. Like, each side of the cover,
Hmm.
side of this war, shooting at each other, and there's a fleets in the background shooting at each other, and it lines up pretty nicely for the
Yep.
next 2 books because it's just a lot of fun. I think I saw the re-release of the Thrawn trilogy. The
Yeah.
the first 2 books did that, I think, where they had like Thrawn's face in the middle, and that was like broken in half between the 2 books, and that was like a lot, and it's something really cool that I really wanted to have, and so I asked my artist, and he said okay, and he did it, and it came out great.
And I haven't seen that cover honestly, just because I do like the old covers. Um, you know, back when people knew how to do covers. Uh, I don't know if I'd like that, like the with the face split in half.
I mean, the cover actually is a nice cover. It's not like it looks almost, I don't know how it compares to a lot of older covers, but it doesn't look like super, not like super like digital looking. Like, it looks nice.
I
Like, it's
got
almost
you.
like it's kind of like a stylized face almost on the cover.
Hmm. I think I no, I have seen it. Well, that's taste. I prefer your
Yeah,
cover um, over that sort of thing anyway.
so do I.
Just because it's busier and it has more interesting things on it. Um, that isn't just some dude's face that you're already here to see. Let's be real. The only reason Thrawn books are selling is because it's Timothy Zahn, and
And
yeah, and people haven't, Thrawn's that fan favorite character Disney hasn't figured out how to ruin. Though I'm pretty sure they'll find some way to do it, like make Pelion more than just his Watson character or whatever. Though please, don't do it. Don't do it,
I
guys.
kind of yeah. I almost. I mean, on one level, I want to see Thrawn more, but on the other level, I kind of want them not to do more, so they don't find a way to ruin it.
Right.
For that reason, I created a Thrawn-like character for my own book, so I have one that I can play around with and not get ruined because I'll do it myself.
I love it.
It's the
Uh,
best way to make sure they can't. If you do it yourself, the only person responsible is you. So, like, I think hopefully.
right. And it's part of the whole thing, the game and the intriguing characters and getting things going with all this stuff because um, it's important to get people engaged. It's important to get people loving your books and stuff like that. And having a fan favorite character isn't the worst way to do it.
I don't have that many readers yet. I'm still trying to build my audience, but like I have a handful, a literal handful, unfortunately, but a handful of like diehard people who like were waiting for the next book. Who like their reviews are glowing reviews. They're all really happy like, with what I'm doing so far, and that's what you have to do. You have to build that kind of core hardcore audience, but obviously that takes a while. But I have a couple so far, and people who are really looking forward to the books and who really enjoy them when they come out, and. I mean, it's really just a lot of fun to work on. I honestly enjoy even the editing process at this point because like my editor, I have a very good. My editor is a Superversive guy. He's my editor on all the books so far.
Outstanding.
So, so again, he's been very fun to work with too. He knows what kind of audience I'm writing for. He knows he's read the whole series so far, so he knows five. He remembers stuff from the earlier books that might need to be referenced, or if I could call back something or whatever. Like he's been very helpful. He doesn't try to change anything more than needs to be changed. Like, but he doesn't shy away from. With one of the book five, as a chapter he said really need to be reworked. Okay, so I'm reworking it now, and so far we're mostly done with it now. But it's coming out much nicer than when it was before, and
Hmm.
it just makes it even more fun.
Oh yeah.
With know who won't cause me problems.
I had
Aspect
a
of the project.
yeah. I bought a uh what is it? Oh, so I run the sometimes anyway. The what is it? Slush file for Superversive Press. So like
Yeah,
if somebody has no potential, I just say, "Hey, look, here's the problem." If they're respectful, I help them out. And say, "Well, this is the problem, XYZ, the character's kind of unlikable and so on and so forth." And then uh what is it? And then another person came in. He had a book that was like kind of on the borderline. Like there's some things people like to do, like they like to, and this is a weird thing, and it always involves fruit. But eat the fruit, and then the juice dribbles down the chin. It's it's a weird line that's so out of place that I've never seen it work any time it's ever been written, except in one case, which was kind of like an Eve eating the forbidden fruit scene, which you can imagine for it. So I said, take this out, do this, do that. Your story's okay, but it really needs, to like there's a scene where they go into the forest to find the missing half of her memories. Like that needs more. This needs less. And it's like you work on it, you get something that's just better and better, and it has more of that feel for it, more crowd pleasers. It's just,
and that's also why I like working with the same people for everything. I've been done all six
mm-hmm,
books that I've written so far, plus actually a seventh book that's currently shelved for now because he let me know that it had enough issues I was going to need a significant rework. I just haven't had time to rework it yet. I'm focusing on this series anyway now. So that
yeah,
way I just have a separate book entirely that I just set aside for now, and I have all of his comments I'm going to go through eventually and rework
mm-hmm,
what needs to be reworked. It's really good, but also especially now that he he really does know the kind of audience I'm writing for. He knows, like, I mean, it was really also, it makes it also all the more rewarding for me to, like, also in addition to his critiques or whatever he needs things I need to change. Like I have in book 5, you let me know there's one scene near the end of the book that makes the book worth it, even if nothing else was there. Like that scene itself was just worth it for the whole book. So
Mm.
something to hear, or just saying, like, or him noticing little references I make to, like, other, like, to, like, a Star Trek episode or something once in a while, or other little callbacks I make to the previous books. Like he notices it. But it also tells me that he actually reads it carefully. He knows what he's doing, which obviously he does. So
Yep.
between the editing, between the cover art, with everything, I found a good map person who does my galaxy maps. So she's been very easy to work with. Also, a worldwide production at this point. I live in Israel now. My artist lives in Los Angeles. Band lives in Prague. Like, and my map editor is up in Maine, I think. So, like, it's a worldwide project right now.
Ah, I know who you're talking about for the Prague fellow. And he's very good. I actually get freaked out sometimes because I've only submitted two manuscripts so far, but both have come back with just, here's your grammar corrections. What about the rest of it? It's fine. But then again, I'm that kind of author. But um, actually, I'm kind of interested. Like, how much editing do you do on your own? Like, when you write it and you look at it, do you reread it before you send it to an editor, or is it kind of one and
Yeah,
done? Or
usually what I've been doing lately, my process has evolved a little bit since I started writing initially. That's more or less is I write it. I I also often you leave, like, placeholders for if I have names that I don't have a name off the top of my head. So if I need it for a random character, I'll leave a name placeholder there. One
mm-hmm.
revision on my own, like just going through any notes I made that I have to go back to, and obviously taking out those placeholder names. Go through it myself once, and that's when I contact my editor and I get that sent to him and move on with that. Or on my
Mm-hmm.
own app for him. But at some point, I just, like, things just seem to get better over on just by natural process of just doing it more and more.
Yep.
I want to get things out faster anyway, and I mean, the quality hasn't dropped at all. I mean, at some point, there's only so much I could do to myself because I can't really edit myself grammar wise. It really doesn't work for all of us to do that beyond a certain point. And
Mm-hmm.
if I see a typo if I'm writing and I see a typo in the paragraph I just wrote, I'll obviously fix it. But otherwise, my rule is I don't go back in anything once I write it until I do my own solo revision, and then with it, I usually go through it one more time after he's done, just in case there's anything else I wanted to adjust slightly that I think needs to be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I'm trying just to make it both for speed reasons and also just because your editing almost becomes hurtful. I mean, you don't want to edit too much, just like you don't want to edit too little.
Yeah. Well, it's always that careful balance. Like people say, if you like the line, you should get rid of it, and there's a little bit of truth in that. But if authors are incredibly um, an incredibly hard time dealing with their little sweet babies. Um,
Yes.
but it's all right. I'll always be there to slap it out of their hands. I'll even yell slam dunk sometimes. It feels
Uh,
great.
yeah,
Uh,
fortunately, I haven't had to. I fortunately haven't had to do too much of that myself yet.
hmm
I have to take something out that I wanted to keep, but usually I've been able to either not have it in the first place, like, or have whatever I want there works, or I'll find a way to rework it.
Yep.
It's
And
better, and
yeah, I've had to rewrite chapters and plot lines and everything else before. It's a fun time. And honestly, if it needs doing, it's a good thing to do it.
yeah,
And that's how it is. Like this is a craft. This is as much of a thing as carpentry, except you work with your hands to type, not to or write, not to
yeah.
carve wood or whatever it is. Carpenters do. I know exactly what carpenters do, guys. I swear. I'm just being funny about it. So let's go back to Galaxy Ascendant. So you've talked a bit about the plot. There's a galactic war. We're following. I think you said 8 characters.
There's
Um,
at this point, eight. I mean, there were. It said in book one there were three main characters. Book two there were five, and then that went up to eight by book three, and stuck around more or less around there for the rest of the series, basically.
I getcha. So, um, so it seems like there's two sides to it. Looks like someone in empirical clothing and somebody with a space princess and a robot. Is this your typical good and evil, or is it more impressive?
I mean, I don't. I mean, there definitely is like absolute good and absolute evil in the universe, but the characters we're following on the antagonist side,
Mm-hmm.
evil people themselves. Like, so I mean, or not necessarily depending on your point of view, or whatever. I try. I think I don't enjoy writing very much. I prefer writing heroic characters.
Yeah,
Character who's on arguably the wrong side, if we're going to call it that.
of
And so the
course.
evil people, it's kind of like how Thrawn in Star Wars is not an evil person, really, even though he's the antagonist and he's on we're supposed to root against. So
Yeah.
like there is in the universe absolute evil like out there.
Oh, good.
Whether you see it now, whether it's more hidden at this point, it definitely is there. I definitely don't want. I'm not falling into the trap of the morally gray thing like with Game of Thrones fell into, and all the stories that kind of copy that
Mm-hmm.
versus evil. But I also do draw a lot on history. I draw a lot on stuff not directly, not for message reasons, but just from the reality. I have a master's degree in history, so I spend a lot of time researching history stuff. And so
Yeah.
even like there's always people even on the bad guy side, if you're going to call it that, who are not evil, even if there are people on that side who are pure evil.
Yeah. It's like when you have some sort of Christian prince, fighting for a different side against, other members of Christendom or
Yeah,
something like that. Or
I mean, arguably, World War One. I mean, arguably,
yeah,
there really wasn't like a evil side in World War One. There was on the other side was the bad guys, but
yeah.
like it's not like World War Two, where it's as easy to really say this side was the bad side.
Well, the bad side were the communists, but they weren't an original power.
Yeah.
Um, like what was there's some sort of joke. It's like watch some Serbian depressive, kill 10 million men, and it's just some dude shooting at Franz Ferdinand, and it's like, wow, that's accurate though. That's hurtfully accurate.
Yeah, so it's just I'd also
Hmm.
I don't do too much of it. I try to get into the inner workings a bit of both sides to some degree. To see
Yeah.
I guess that's probably why I like time, but I like writing a lot, often writing characters who are in positions of power or leadership, because you get to see that kind of stuff, which is fascinating to me. And it's also just more interesting to have those perspectives. It also allows for space battles to be seen from the point of view of commanders and not just a guy in a fighter
Yeah.
kind of view you get.
Personally, though, I've seen more commanders than I have fighters. But then again, that's probably just what I saw. Uh, I do like it though, especially like the Galaxy's Edge fighters pilot scenes. Those
Uh,
are very enjoyable.
those are always fun to read and to write too, but it's a very different kind of action scene to write when you're writing for that kind of character versus a character on the command ship,
Hmm.
whether or not the command ship is directly engaged or not, which in my case it often is, because I kind of the leaders who are not afraid to get into the front line. I mean, it's also a very IDF thing. Like it's a very the army in Israel that even the commanders lead from the front, whether even when it's dangerous. Like the last war in Gaza in 2015, I think it was
Hmm.
a good third of the casualties were people of command ranks because they were with the front with their men and they were leading them. So like majors and up were killed in that war because they were at the front. Like this is what the army does here. So I like characters who do that. It's always time and place for everything, of course, but the characters more so than just sit back.
I get you. And that's like I before we started, I was actually rewatching part of Gundam, the Origin movie. If you've seen those, and they
I'm
actually
vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, they have like command ships and stuff like that, but they have like the strategy there and who, what, when, where, why. But it's really brief and really it's in the background, the setup. And then they bring up the mobile suits and it's just long glorious action shot of these, mobile suits just wrecking the Earth fleet. And that's, like you got to know when to have that logic set up behind it and when to just be like, all right, here's mobile suits, or here's the soldier, or here's, some dude machine gunning his way through a Nazi base. um like it's Doom or something. It's not realistic, but it's fun as all hell.
And it's also why it does help to have multiple different characters that you could play around with. So you could have one character doing that role, one character doing the other role, so you can get
Hmm.
both of them, both because it's fun to write both ways, and also because there are readers obviously who like. So we could have both there, and
Yeah.
yeah, it comes down to just you want to have fun stories. Like obviously, you want to have compelling characters, but that all combines to just a fun story,
Yep.
and that's really what it really is about. This is escapist fiction. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell any kind of push any agenda here.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, and that's important. I make no bones of it. I'm a Christian man and I write Christian fiction, but at the same time, it's not like a preacher pops up and has a speech or whatever. It's directly connected to the story or themes or any number of things. Like you don't need to have like a soapbox for anything, but instead, all you have to do is have a
you just
character.
say yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. What?
what you're saying.
Oh, it's as simple as having a character, just call on the name of Christ, in trouble. Nothing crazy, nothing crazy at all. Uh,
It's very easy to just have a character be like just a simple line like this. Like the character like muttered a prayer before they went into battle. You don't even have to go into
mm-hmm,
what it's about. Who the prayer is even to doesn't necessarily even matter. I don't hide that at all in my books. I have multiple characters who are to different varying degrees religious and for whatever beliefs they hold. I mean, obviously they're all aliens. So I mean, some of it's inspired by stuff that I know. I mean, I'm an Orthodox Jew, so that plays into some of it, obviously.
mm-hmm,
I also do enjoy writing characters who don't think like I do because that's fiction, and which makes it fun.
absolutely. And
I mean,
it's
but I do have that around. Also, I try to have characters who comes down to having heroic characters again, and that's a big piece of it. Is like
mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And it's as much about being men and having men who are men as it is about any side issue. Because we have, character, at least from what I'm picking up from what you described to me, because we have characters who are men, act like men, it creates just this better experience for everything. There's no need to, create the woman who is actually a man in the shape of a woman or anything like
yeah,
that. We just need to create, and this is shocker, top 10 ways to write a good character. BuzzFeed article, actually have good characters with motivations that a reader can say, yes, this makes sense. Like I like the idea of having a noble knight who serves the emperor. He's noble, but he's like, and he shows mercy and all that jazz, but the emperor is himself evil. Like that's a good way to do it. Or having the hero who has to make the hard choice, and maybe he makes the bad choice, but and then the rest of the story is him,
Tony
overcoming
for
it.
it.
Exactly. You understand.
And the
Well,
same for female characters too. You can have like a more action oriented female character, but you have woman as a female character. They have like their motivation is to protect people. Their motivation is to love who they love or to do some. And also they have, and also I mean, a couple of my female characters actually are going to have the question and they have to decide at some point,
mhm.
really, like what they want out of their lives going forward. Whether they want to stay like this or they want to devote their lives to more of a family life, which that is like a that some of the characters are actually dealing with at different points in the story because I would like to think that most women, at least even today, I would hope like a life goal is to have a family one day. And so I mean, I'm not going to deny that from my own character just because they were like shooting people. Like
Mhm.
it just seems to. I mean, I tried to write my women as women. Like
How
shocker.
shocking, how strange. But that's neither here nor there. I'm glad that you seem to understand the importance of having good characters. And while I'm in some pretty dire financial straits right now, that are in no way connected to anything I'm doing. Um, I really do hope that you extend Galaxy's extend Ascendant for a little bit. Um,
I probably
into
will. No, yeah, Indiegogo allows you to extend up to 60 days, so I could add
yeah.
another 20 days to the campaign, which I probably will.
Yeah, and just to see what goes on. A lot of people seem to be a little tired right now, and for some reason, a lot of people around me are experiencing financial troubles. Besides myself, of course. So perhaps it's just a matter of timing, and the next 20 days, the next month, will do you much better.
It's hard to see that in advance. You can't tell what's going to happen.
Hmm.
So
Well, I'll ask you. Why don't you give us a plug for Galaxy Ascendant, and then I'll plug some things of my own, and then we'll head out.
okay, I mean, Galaxy Ascendant is a series that anybody who enjoys space opera, a good space opera of the Star Wars vein, especially a
Hmm.
very wide range of characters, all aliens, as I mentioned before, which makes it more fun, at least for me, and big, large scale space battles, galactic wars, more and also adventure stuff going on too. Like I said, with 8 characters, I have a lot of different kind of plot threads moving at different points, and without diluting anything else. And
Hmm.
books 4 and 5 are the biggest books in the series so far, not by word count, but by and the scope of everything has just gone up to 11 at this point.
I
And it's
love
been so much fun to write and read, and we're not even done yet. There's still 2 more books after these.
it.
So,
Well, I wish you every success
thank
in
you.
the future as well as now. Uh, Guys, do check out the Superversive website down below, as well as my own book, Tears of Elfland. Kids go into the woods to deal with their emotional problems and discover all kinds of adventures along the way. Yakov, Merkin, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. All the best to you too.